we act now and how we govern AI will shape the future opportunities people have. We can have a wide vision of the world with people included, or we can have a narrow vision that excludes people. And that's our challenge and our opportunity now. Well, let's start on the optimistic note. My hope is that AI actually improves our everyday lives, and we know it's doing that already. My biggest fear, and it is geopolitical, it's broader than just AI as a set of technologies, if you will, is that the people who lead the charge in AI might in the future not share the values we all hold dear. So it's a question around how we govern AI through the rule of law and through the practices we adopt on the part of industry. That's my biggest fear, is that we move from a kind of a rules-based system that respects values to one that doesn't. I think in the area of technology assessment, it's one area where I'd like to see the law focus more heavily. And I think we've seen this with the EU proposals around governing AI's development and adoption. There I see the law, the hard law, the laws that are developed at a regional level or through national parliaments, working with industry-led approaches. So I actually see it being multi-layered, where the law would require at a broad level companies to do certain things around, for example, risk assessment, and then companies would meet them halfway through recognized international standards, as an example. So I see law as creating a framework and creating the compulsion, the drive for companies to have to do certain things at a broad level around managing the impact of AI. And then I see recognized kind of self-regulatory mechanisms like standards plugging in to make sure that when we design AI, when we scale AI, when we deploy AI, and AI becomes something at scale, that it is safe, responsible. But I think it's very much a question of relying on people who know what they're doing, the engineers and technicians, but also at a very broad level, setting the values and the principles we want people to follow as countries, and then even more globally as an international community of responsible nations. And that's exactly what the OECD has spoken about, and very much what the EU is considering as well at the moment. A book by Mackenzie Walk from the New School in New York. It's actually looking at the transformation of our whole capitalist system and looking at how information now has overtaken capital as one of those kind of key vectors in how the world is run. It's just looking at taking the old kind of Marxist ideas about capital and stages of production and saying, have we moved beyond capital being the key driver? And if you look in the current world, and I'm talking about people who adopt AI systems as part of their product offerings, so the big tech platforms, could we think of the world in which we live as being more driven by information systems and networks that, collect, sort, make sense of information, as that being the currency rather than capital alone, which is an interesting reading. The legal status of data is quite interesting because it's the data sets that people own and it's the infrastructures they own, not the data itself. And I half wonder if we're creating a tragedy of the commodities, to use a word that Alex Frame had talked about, where in trying to challenge some of the dominance of internet companies and the like, we're actually also creating a longer term challenge where we are commodifying data at an individual level. And I actually really wonder where that will go in the longer term in relation to AI, but also in relation to people's rights and companies as well, and their legitimate role in the economy. I wonder if the conversation we should be having is actually around broader societal harms and those sort of questions that people avoid and companies tend to avoid, because I think they are tricky, they are hard for people in for lawyers, for policymakers, they're harder to fix. And that's exactly where we should be focusing.